This man fought 34 times, won 21 of them, and died at 30. But what if I told you he wasn't a hero? He was an investment. In ancient Rome, owning a gladiator wasn't about glory. It was a savage financial side hustle. And every match, a calculated roll of the dice where fortunes were made, lost, and measured down to the last drop of blood. That man who fought 34 times, his name was Flamma. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly how much he was worth and why his owner probably retired rich while Flamma died in his prime. Let me take you back to the moment a Roman elite decided to buy his first gladiator. You're standing in a slave market, inspecting trained killers like livestock. And here's where it gets brutal. Trained gladiators could cost as much as a small building. One widely cited but unverified source from Pompeii suggests elite fighters could sell for as much as 173,000 sesterces, about 43,000 denarii, potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions in modern purchasing power. Whether or not that exact figure is accurate, the economics were brutal. We're talking years of specialized training, customized diet, and elite medical investment, all wrapped up in one man who could die in front of a roaring crowd. War prisoners and condemned criminals were essentially free. Younger fighters could be trained up cheaper. But if you wanted a proven, championship-caliber killer who could hold thousands of spectators in his palm, you paid a fortune. And when he dies, you're out everything. But here's the thing most people miss. You didn't have to buy. You could rent. The gladiator business was a rental economy, and that changes everything. In 177 CE, the Roman government had to step in with regulations. A senatorial decree ranked gladiators by skill and capped rental fees by show budget, roughly 3,000 to 15,000 sesterces per fighter. That's 750 to 3,750 denarii for a single appearance. Why the caps? Politicians were bankrupting themselves in gladiator arms races. The decree explicitly aimed to curb costs and rein in abuses, to stop people from ruining themselves paying for spectacles. That 15,000 sesterces cap equaled about 12 to 13 years of a legionary's pay in the 2nd century, at around 300 denarii per year for one afternoon. But here's the genius. Rental contracts made everyone want gladiators alive. Roman legal texts document how these contracts worked. Roman jurist Gaius gives a textbook example: 20 denarii if the hired gladiator returned safe, 1,000 if killed or maimed, illustrating the steep death penalties contracts could impose. But that was just one example. Actual contracts varied. And here's where it got brutal. If you rented a fighter and he died, you paid massive compensation. Legal scholars note these death penalties could run many times the rental fee, sometimes cited as high as 50 times or more for valuable fighters. Now watch what this creates. Nobody wins when a gladiator dies. The owner gets compensation, but it's less than replacing a trained fighter, and he loses all future rental income. The sponsor just paid a crushing multiple of his budget. And the gladiator? Dead. This contract aligned everyone, owner, sponsor, even the gladiator himself, toward the same goal: survival. The owner wanted to keep collecting those rental fees indefinitely. The sponsor wanted to avoid financial ruin. The gladiator wanted to keep breathing. That's why mortality rates weren't what you think. One influential estimate puts early imperial deaths at around 19 per 100 fights, with missio commonly granted. Later centuries may have seen higher rates. The evidence suggests that, at least in the early empire, most gladiators who fought didn't die. Draws and reprieves were common. When Augustus banned matches without missio, without the possibility of reprieve, Suetonius suggests it aligned with a trend to preserve trained fighters. Scholars call it an economical, pragmatic development designed to protect expensive human capital. The system didn't just encourage survival, it engineered it. That barley diet ancient writers mocked? Isotope work at Ephesus shows a plant-heavy diet with an ash-based calcium tonic. Some scholars hypothesize this body composition may have offered protection from lethal cuts, creating spectacular-looking wounds that weren't as deep or dangerous. Whether intentional or not, the result was gladiators who could take more punishment and keep fighting. Medical care was elite level. Galen of Pergamon, one of history's most famous physicians, worked as a gladiator doctor at Pergamon. His presence there underscores the investment in medical care. Each death was a significant financial loss, and owners invested accordingly. Now, back to Flamma, that Syrian secular who fought 34 times. His tombstone records 34 fights, 21 victories, 9 draws, and 4 times granted missio. Here's the myth correction everyone gets wrong. Flamma didn't refuse freedom 4 times. Missio meant reprieve from death, not manumission. He was defeated 4 times, and 4 times the crowd spared him. That skill so undeniable that even in defeat, spectators wanted him alive. Economically, Flamma was perfect. 34 performances with 0 deaths. His owner never paid compensation. And here's the key. Flamma probably didn't cost much to acquire. War prisoners and trainees could be obtained cheaply or free. What made him valuable was what he generated. Now, we're about to do some highly speculative math. Flamma fought roughly a century before those 177 CE regulations, so we don't have exact figures for his era. But using those later fee structures as a rough benchmark for what elite fighters could command, and knowing the gladiator economy operated on similar principles throughout the empire, if Flamma started in the lower ranks and worked his way up, he might have earned anywhere from 1,000 sesterces early in his career to perhaps 8,000 or more as he became legendary. That's roughly 250 to 2,000 denarii per fight across 34 bouts, potentially 8,000 to 68,000 denarii in total rental revenue from an asset that may have cost his owner almost nothing to acquire. Throughout his entire career, the owner never paid death compensation, never replaced him mid-fight, never had to reinvest in a new champion. Flamma died at 30. The tombstone gives his age but not the cause. His owner extracted maximum value from a single asset. That's what I mean when I say Flamma wasn't a hero. He was an investment, possibly the best investment his owner ever made. But most Romans weren't that lucky. Titus Annius Milo was notorious for lavish gladiatorial spending and ended up ruined. His estate sold for a fraction of its value, consumed by debts. Marcus Aemilius Scaurus built an enormous temporary theater for his games in 58 BCE that became a byword for extravagance. He spent vast sums chasing consulship, lost the election, and faced exile. Even Julius Caesar famously ran huge debts funding spectacles, debts so massive that Marcus Crassus, Rome's richest man, had to back them. But here's the paradox. You couldn't not spend. Cicero states it explicitly. If the people demand such entertainment, men of proper judgment must at least consent to supply it. He chronicles the arms race. Publius Crassus gave splendid games, Gaius Claudius followed, then many others. This was an arms race you couldn't afford to lose, nor could you afford to win. Augustus's laws explicitly claimed to save the Roman elite from the bankruptcies they would otherwise suffer. But regulations failed. Commodus ignored his father's decree. Politicians found loopholes, staging games for fathers dead 20 years, timing spectacles to elections, distributing tickets as bribes. The system was unstoppable because gladiators weren't entertainment. They were power. Juvenal coined the phrase that defined it. Panem et circenses, bread and circuses. Gladiators were infrastructure, how you bought elections, demonstrated dominance, and kept the masses pacified. So here's the takeaway. Every time Flamma entered that arena, someone was doing math. His owner calculated rental fees versus replacement costs. The sponsor weighed appearance fees against death compensation. Physicians estimated survival probability. Politicians measured spectacle against solvency. This wasn't sport. It was a brutal economic system running on human capital, quantified in blood, optimized for survival because death was too expensive. The system engineered gladiators to live, not from mercy, but because corpses don't generate recurring revenue. Flamma got his tombstone, erected by a companion named Delicatus. His owner probably got rich, and Rome got exactly what it paid for. A system so profitable and deadly it consumed men and money for centuries, where everyone desperately wanted gladiators to survive, not because they cared about human life, but because death was bad for business. That's the economics of owning a gladiator. The returns could be extraordinary if your asset kept breathing. The risks were terminal the moment he stopped. And the only guarantee? The math never cared whether you lived or died, only whether you were still profitable.